Hello and welcome. This is me again, and today I've got a very special guest, Robert Siciliano. He is the CEO of Protect Now LLC and the architect of the strategic human firewall that I can't wait to ask what that actually means in practice, and I see it's also trademarked. Robert, how are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for the opportunity. Very happy to be here.
Absolutely. Can we jump right in? What is a human firewall?
So the strategic human firewall, we all know what a technical human firewall. It's designed to block out bad guys, bad actors from getting access, right? The human firewall is really a methodology revolving around humans protecting themselves in their workplace. Essentially, it is defined as someone who blocks deception. It's a proactive governance. It's a mindset. It really is a mindset, a methodology that turns employees from passive targets, which is what most of us are, to an active detection layer. It's a shift from I trust what I see by default to I verify everything.
And today, what would be like the main vectors for that to be on everybody's mind in a company? What do you see the most that the human firewall is trying to fix?
So right now, most security awareness training is just that. It's security awareness training. It's designed to make the employees a bit more aware. But it's not necessarily moving the needle when it comes to affecting that employee in regards to their own perceptions regarding what security is and what security isn't. And we can certainly get into that. It's not really making the employee any more effective in regards to managing risk. Mm-hmm. Most security awareness training is compliance-based. It's phishing-simulation training, which is necessary. But from our perspective, it's more putting the cart before the horse. Meaning like the phishing simulation training, the compliance-based is do these various things, be aware of these various issues, or else. And it's not necessarily affecting the employee where they are in their lives in regards to their own security. It's not moving the needle to make the employee that much more aware of the risks that they face in their own lives on a regular basis to get them to appreciate the value security has in their life. Therefore, when they're made to do security awareness training compliance-based, they're not truly engaged in the process. Again, it's putting the cart before the horse, and you're not getting the employee to really care about security when you provide them compliance-based training. This type of training, the strategic human firewall, is designed to get the employee fundamentally to care about the issue, to get them to think securely, to reposition in what security is and isn't, so that when they engage in basic compliance training, they understand what it is that they're doing and why. It's if you are about to go on a very long trek in the woods, uncharted woods that you've never been through yourself, and all you have is a map. And that map is designed to, follow this and you should be fine, which is what phishing training is. But what if prior to going out in the woods with that map, you actually sat down with the guide, and that guide actually explained the map to you, and you were able to ask that guide questions. And as the guide is explaining the map to you, the guide might say, okay, so as you head down this trail, you're going to see a fork in the road. And at that fork in the road, if you look to your right, you're going to see a ridge and a body of water over that ridge. And so if you stay to the left, then you're going to see this and that and so forth. Now you have a better understanding of what the map is going to provide you and what the trail is going to introduce as you head down it. And that's what the strategic human firewall is designed to do. It's designed to provide the employee a better understanding of what to look out for, so that when they actually encounter it, they've already been there, they've done that. They have a better feel for what's being presented to them.
Would you say that today it's still the case that when people talk about security, we tend to think about the tech stack more than anything else? Firewalls, authenticator apps, strong passwords, all of these ridiculous requirements with 7 special characters. Is it still true that
That's it.
you can have all of that and then the intruders can get in with something much simpler than that, a little bit of social engineering?
That setup has been around for what, 20, 25 years, maybe 30 years at best. And it's relatively new for essentially the human species to engage in. And it's necessary and it's required. And while your developers and your company officers and those in the C-suite understand all of those various systems and strategies, the employee, the end user, the administrator, frontline employees and such, they ask me when I present a presentation, when I do a program, the questions they ask are, how do I know what links are okay to click when I do a Google search? That's their level of digital literacy. That's their level of cyber hygiene. Like, they don't know enough to use a different passcode across multiple accounts. They don't know enough to use two-factor authentication. They don't recognize risk effectively because it's never been properly introduced to them. Phishing simulation training, compliance-based, is just one aspect of security awareness training, and it's really all they get. They've never actually had an opportunity to sit down with a cybersecurity expert and ask any and all questions that they've ever had about protecting their own identity, about protecting their own bank account. In most of the presentations that I do, I engage them in various questions. I start off asking them questions, such as, how many of you, show of hands, can honestly say that you use a different passcode across multiple accounts? If I get 15% of the room to raise their hand that they're using a different passcode across multiple accounts, that's a lot, which means as much as 85% are using the same passcode across multiple accounts. And in that same line of questioning, how many of you are using two-factor authentication? And because it's required a little bit more, I might get 20% of the room raises their hand. Yeah, we're using multi-factor authentication, which means 80% isn't. And as I'm asking these questions, I point out that at this point in time, with 175 billion records being compromised in the past, 15, 20 years, 175 billion, that of that, about 15 billion of those records are actually passwords. And that researchers show that about 94% of those passwords are all very similar in their nature, multiple passwords being used the same time. You know, the word password, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. And when they begin to see that their own cyber hygiene, they're lacking in digital literacy, is contributing to the problem, they begin to recognize that they need to make some changes in their own lives personally. And then from there, it makes more sense to them to engage in security awareness professionally.
I think the computer security circles is the only place I can think of where being paranoid is a good thing, and it's not an insult. How do you work against that perception? How do you make people get excited about being paranoid?
I'm really glad you brought that up. So paranoia is a double-edged sword. It's a double-edged sword because certain people that recognize risk effectively can look at our relationship to paranoia and security somewhat effectively, whereas the majority of the public, including most of your employees, when it comes to considering security in its relationship to paranoia, it's actually problematic. And the problem there is that paranoia effectively is, the medical community defines it as a mental health issue. It is someone who truly does believe that others are out to get them, that they do think that they're being stalked, or they always have to look over their shoulder. And there's a tremendous amount of fear and worry when it comes to paranoia as a mental health disease. And so when I ask my audiences basic questions like, how many of you have a home security system, right? Usually I get maybe 15, 20% of the room has a home security system. And I ask them questions like, why don't you have a home security system? They say, I don't have a home security system because I don't want to live like that. And I say, okay, so what does that actually mean? And they say, I don't want to have to worry. I don't want to live in fear. And they say, I don't want to be paranoid, is what they say. So what they're really saying is, I don't want to have a home security system because I don't want a constant reminder that there are bad actors out there that mean to do me harm. Therefore, I'd rather function in denial, not think about it, just keep it out of my mind because I don't want to be paranoid, is what they're saying. And they literally say those words. So we often have a very unhealthy relationship to security because we think it's about paranoia. And while there is a healthy amount of paranoia, as you say, that is only really effective when the individual truly recognizes risk effectively. They understand the differentiation between security and really what paranoia is. Whereas most of the general public looks at security as paranoia as actually a bad thing. That people who engage in the processes of security, they worry a lot. They live in fear. They're always looking over their shoulder. That's how they look at it. That's how they see it. That's why they don't have a home security system. That's why many of them don't even lock their doors. I don't want to live like that. I just want to be free. I don't want to have to worry. I don't want to be paranoid. And that dichotomy prevents them from engaging in risk management at all. They don't change up their passcodes. They don't set up two-factor authentication because they don't think that it's their job to begin with. It's the CISO's job. And that is a problem. And so my role is to essentially change their understanding, their perception of what security is, which is risk management. It's systems and strategies to reduce risk versus our unhealthy view or misunderstanding of what security is, paranoia, worry, fear, and so forth. And what happens as a result of that worry and fear is that we go into denial. We truly go into denial. We say, oh, it can't happen to me. Those things don't happen around here. Why would they want to steal my identity? Why would they want to hack me? And that's what we do as humans. We use denial, which is a psychological mechanism that allows us to not have to think about threats and anxiety and so forth. While I 100% appreciate the question, the intended audience, the end user, the employee that doesn't recognize risk effectively, they look at paranoia as a bad thing that they don't want anything to do with at all.
All right, so let's make it more complicated now. You can't have a podcast these days without mentioning AI, and it is a little bit of a 2,000-pound elephant in the room. How do we think about all of that in a world where you can now generate customized, personalized messages that, sound human and have way more hints that we recognize as human and convincing, and can attack on many different mediums, from emails to voice messages to text to anything else, really? How do we get any kind of sense of security without getting completely knee-deep into that paranoia?
So AI, deepfakes, voice cloning has, for one, for me at least, reinvigorated the conversation. It's energized the conversation. Cybersecurity itself has become boring, meaning there was a time when hackers, there was a certain mysteriousness to them, like a sexiness to it. Hacktivists, all that, even script kiddies making a name for themselves, all of that, black hats and everything else. And it went away. We stopped talking about it. Even big data breaches used to make the news weekly. And we used to talk about that all the time. Major breaches of data and all of our information being compromised, and it would make the news on a regular basis. We don't talk about that anymore. However, AI has invigorated the conversation in a lot of different ways, certainly due to the fact that for security professionals, it actually is a really good thing with all the various tools that are available to you to allow scaling certain operations and much more effective detection and such. But for the consumer, for the employee, for the front line, for those in which are in your charge that have a difficult time passing a phishing simulation training, it's also invigorated the conversation there too, because AI is interesting. Deepfakes, voice cloning. It's Mission Impossible meets the Minority Report meets Float 7. And so it's interesting in that regard. It brings a whole lot of Hollywood attention to the topic. So for me, that's great because it gives me a lot more to talk about. And for the CISO, I think it's going to keep them up at night. AI has stripped away the clumsy red flags of traditional fraud, is what it's done. In the past, criminals relied on blunder force phishing, right? Mass blasting emails riddled with scammer grammar. Today, generative AI allows for high precision impersonation at scale. That is what should keep the CISO up at night. Criminals now use what we call neural puppetry to create the perfect lie. By scraping just seconds of audio from social media, of course, they use voice cloning to impersonate a trusted source, like a spouse or a CEO. And at this point, it's with 95 to 100% accuracy, depending on the tool, right? And this, of course, weaponizes our biological default to trust. And our biological default to trust is really the issue at hand here, making deception feel 100% human. Furthermore, AI automates the grooming process, normalizing the dialogue between the scammer and the victim to build rapport, to exploit, what I call the loneliness loophole, which is a big deal. 25% of all humans, they wake up every day experiencing loneliness. 25%, their default throughout the day is they are lonely. And that's problematic. And bad guys know this. They use it against us. So AI removes the manual labor of social engineering, allowing a single predator to pilot thousands of digital puppets simultaneously, bypassing firewalls and hacking the human wetware, essentially their brains. Again, their biological default to trust. And so that being the case, there's no way going forward that if all you're doing is providing phishing simulation training, basic security awareness, that the employee is going to be effectively engaged in mitigating risk when they are being phished with an AI clone, whether it's voice or video. There's no way that they're going to be able to figure that one out because their default to trust is that they want to and they need to trust the person on the other end. See, there's something that I figured out a long time ago, and it's essentially called the human blind spot, right? The human blind spot is our psychological instinct to trust the familiar. We are what is considered an interdependent species, and that means that we depend upon each other for our survival. We need each other for nothing other than procreation, right? And the basis of procreation is that we need to trust each other, right? We have to trust. And so throughout the day, phone calls, emails, text messages, the people that we correspond with in person, we want to, and by default, need to trust them to a certain degree, which means that we are constantly giving the benefit of the doubt, right? And the human blind spot, it really is problematic because that is our default to trust. And that cognitive gap where biological trust overrides digital suspicion leaves the door wide open for AI-enhanced deception. The psychological heuristics is what criminals use to bypass human logic. So think of it as biological impulse versus intellectual understanding, right? The internal conflict between our evolved survival instincts and our modern knowledge of digital risks. And AI has completely changed the game. It's really just made the bad actor's job a lot more effective. And the consumer, the employee, is no more advanced today in regards to their own personal security than they were 20 years ago. How do I know what links are okay to click when I search something on Google? That's where they're at. So the idea is to change the conversation, adapt, not completely change compliance-based training, but update it. In addition to, instead of putting the cart before the horse, let's have a conversation. Let's guide the employee first so they appreciate the value security has in their life.
So give us a sneak peek of what that looks like. In my head, it sounds like we're all doomed. So let's say that I hired you for my organization and you show up for the first 30 days. What do you actually do to improve the situation?
Okay, so we are all doomed unless we have a different conversation. And I think that's important. First of all, I am not a fatalist. I don't throw my hands up in the air and just give up. I'm all about there's a better way. And the better way is we introduce a different style of training. And it starts with understanding the difference between security awareness, which is traditional security training, and what I call security appreciation. Okay? So security appreciation is the shift from awareness, and awareness, of course, is knowing, right, to appreciation, which is caring. Okay? So awareness is from the neck up, and caring is from the heart up, right? We change hearts in order to change minds. And what that means is when employees appreciate how security protects their own lives, behavior changes permanently. I call this the security appreciation gap, that chasm between an employee's intellectual understanding of risk, which is awareness, and the emotional commitment to act on that knowledge, which is appreciation. I call this the kitchen table effect. It's the multiplier effect where successful training ends with the employee teaching the concepts to their family, cementing those lessons for life. It really boils down to a concept that I've developed over the past 30 plus years, that all security is personal. Now think of it like this. When security is personal to me, personal security by definition is violence prevention, okay? It's protecting myself from physical harm. Personal security is protecting myself from physical harm. And personal security is also protecting my home, the people in it, and the stuff in it. But personal security is also protecting your identity. What's more personal than your own identity? And when we change up security awareness training to security appreciation, and we utilize the concept that all security is personal, that fundamentally means the core belief that people protect what they love by teaching someone to protect their own identity or their child's digital footprint, you create a more secure employee at work. So it's really changing up the order of the training. So you start with all security is personal, a live presentation that's either virtual or in person, that's designed as a dialogue, okay? Most security training today is a monologue. It's the employee consuming information. They're being talked at or talked to, right? They're being told what to do via a talking head in a e-learning video or animation or a cartoon. Here are all the problems. These are the various solutions. Do these or else. Versus, which is again, a monologue versus a dialogue, which is a conversation. It's that guide, it's that expert having a dialogue with the audience in regards to, okay, so how many of you are using the same passcode across multiple accounts? How many of you are using two-factor authentication? How many of you are locking the doors to your home? And do you understand the human blind spot and how that works and why we trust by default and how that prevents us from recognizing risk effectively? Because biologically, you want to and need to trust that other person on the other end of the line and so on. And as you present this type of information in that way, you're engaging the individual where they're at in their lives. It's not much different than raising a family. So, for example, like you have kids, whatever age they are, whenever there are lessons in life that need to be learned, do you sit them down and say, okay, here's some e-learning. I'll talk to you in an hour and a half? No. Sit them down and you explain what your experiences are, what you've learned, what you see out there in the world. and how that has affected you and what you learned from it. And the hope is that you communicate that information to your loved one in such a way where they learn the lessons that you learned in your life without having to experience the negative trauma that you experienced. And that's what security awareness training should be, because now they appreciate the lessons that you're imparting upon them versus being told what to do. And that really does flip it around a little bit. So every presentation that I do, I walk in the room, I'm introduced, I get on the platform, and I begin to introduce myself, and I'm looking out in the audience, and this is what I see. And for those of you who are listening versus watching, I'm looking at 100 people in the room, and 75 of them have their arms crossed, and they have a scowl on their face looking at me, okay? And I know what they're saying. They're saying, okay, security guy, tell me something I don't already know. And as I begin to ask them questions, as I begin to point out 15 billion passwords exposed in the dark web, as I begin to point out the ridiculousness of it can't happen to me and why we trust by default and the biological default to trust and all that, now what happens is like their arms begin to go down by their side. Like now they begin to relax and they physically begin to lean in a little bit. You can see the entire dynamic of the room, the body language just changes. And as the arms go down, as they physically lean into the conversation, what happens next is their hands start to go up because now they start to ask questions because the conversation is not what they thought it was going to be. The conversation is now about them. It's about their worries and their fears. It's about their resistance to security to begin with. It's about decimating the fact that they thought security was about paranoia, but it's not. And once they see this, now they begin to see this is about them. It's about my security, my family security. Now they want to know. Now they want to understand. Now they want to, now their questions are, okay, this is great. Now what do I do? Because this is good. Now, how do I protect myself? Because now I want to know. And every single presentation I've ever done, 100% of the time, people line up at the end and they always say to me, I came here because I had to be here. I was told to be here. My boss made me come. And I didn't want to be here because I already know all this stuff, or at least I thought I did. I'm here because I had to be. But ultimately, this is not what I thought it was. And I'm so glad I came because it's nothing like I thought it was. And I wish my spouse was here because he or she would really love this. That's what it's supposed to be. That is how you get your employees to fundamentally care about security. And any CISO in the world can do this if they make security personal about them first, the CISO about them, and communicate their own lessons in life to their employees, making the CISO that much more human to their coworkers.
Love it. At the end of the day, it's all about being human, isn't it?
That's perfectly said. Because when you think about it, and most people don't really truly understand this, but you can do your own Google searching to make the decision on your own. 97% of all the people that you will ever meet in the course of your life, 97% of all people are good in their nature. Their nature is good, meaning that 97% of the world's population are worthy of your trust. Good people. They don't have bad intentions. Occasionally, that 97%, occasionally they lie. Occasionally they're deceptive. Occasionally they do harm. But they don't have bad intentions. Whereas at least 3% of the world's population, we consider them sociopaths and psychopaths, essentially hardcore narcissists that the medical community considers antisocial personality disorders. These are humans that do not experience empathy, sympathy, guilt, or remorse. They truly have no shame. And so hitting, hurting, harming is natural and normal to them. They are effectively the predators that live amongst us. They are the lions and the wolves. And the rest of us are the gazelles and the rabbits. And so it's that 3+% of humans that are making all the noise and are victimizing the 97%. So what this is, it is a human problem. It's humans as predators towards those who aren't. And I don't know that we can solve the predator problem with technology. I think the predator problem needs to be solved by engaging the human, that your fellow humans are the problem, and here's why, and here's how they think, and reverse engineering their processes so that you and I, as the good 97% that don't do harm, understand the motivations of the bad actors, the predators, so that we can reframe our understanding of risk and security and the tools that are available to us so that we can essentially defend ourselves, our families, and our employers.
Love it. Robert, let's give something for people to take home. For the CTOs or CISOs or managers listening to this and thinking, okay, love it, inspirational, but what do I do specifically? Let's give them one thing that they can do next week that doesn't require $1 million budget, a big program, something they can do right away.
Yeah, so traditional compliance training has turned into a checkbox, right? It's a checkbox exercise where employees are trying to advance a video to get through the LMS. What needs to change about how organizations deliver security education is to make it stick through a lasting behavioral shift, okay? And in order to do that, I think that if the CISOs look at, or any company officer looks at, say, their all hands event, right? We all have an on hands event at some point, right? Where you're getting everybody in the room. This is an opportunity. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here. So as we talked about AI, deepfakes, voice cloning, the stuff of 07, Tom Cruise Mission Impossible stuff, start talking about this. Start having that conversation at the all hands event. Doesn't cost you anything, right? This is a perfect opportunity to engage the audience, your employees, in security appreciation. Make it fun, make it interesting. It's more than security, right? It's sci-fi stuff that grabs people's attention, okay? Everybody has, and think of it like this, like stories you can tell. Everybody loves a good story. Do you know what the criminals do, what the predators do? They tell stories. That's what they do. All those emails you get on the Nigerian prince, it's a story. It's a story. It's a compelling story, as ridiculous as it is. But even the ones that are more sophisticated, I need you to text me the password for the network because the system got locked up and your password's the only one that's going to allow me to break in or get through, is a story. That's all bad guys do, is tell stories. We counter their stories with stories of our own. All right. And so talk about, say, your own parents as the CISO. Talk about your own parents. Everybody has somebody in their life that is clueless with technology. Our parents are baby boomers and such. They're bombarded with phone calls and emails and text messages. They're watching late night TV and dropping a credit card and being scammed left and right. Okay. Making security personal means also making it personal to those in charge of your budgets, your COO, your CEO, right? And by talking about yourself personally, how your mom and your dad, or your widowed sister for that matter, is being slammed by romance scams and how they are vulnerable, will help those decision makers and employees personalize how security affects their own lives. And they begin to see how vulnerable everybody truly is. So those who are responsible for your security budget, make it personal to them too. In every presentation I do, like I said, people want to know what to do. And all we really need to do is make security personal to us as company officers, as CISOs, and make it personal to everybody in our audiences, our employees, our coworkers, our bosses with the budgets. And you'd be surprised how quickly, by making security human, they will begin to recognize risk a lot more effectively for both you, coworkers, employees, and your budget.
Robert, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Pleasure to meet you.